It's not an accident. You're hearing this right now. Something in your spirit has been whispering that you can't keep waiting like this forever, and yet here you are still holding on. You've waited through sleepless nights, through prayers that ended in silence, through doors that promised to open and never did. And in that silence, a question has started to echo inside you. Did God forget me? Maybe you wouldn't dare say it out loud, but you felt it. You've watched other people move forward while you've stayed in place. You've celebrated their blessings while wondering why yours seemed to be taking the long way home. You've replayed the timeline in your mind, asking what you did wrong, whether you missed a sign, whether you should have tried harder or let go sooner. Waiting has become its own kind of wilderness, familiar, quiet, and painfully uncertain. But listen, there is a hidden beauty in this silence. Patience isn't the absence of movement. It's the presence of purpose you can't yet see. What looks like stillness to you is actually heaven rearranging everything on your behalf. The very prayer you whispered months ago is still traveling through unseen corridors. Every not yet is carrying weight. You're being led through a process that isn't punishing you, it's preparing you. You've probably asked God, why make me wait if you already know the outcome? But what if the waiting is the outcome, at least for now? Because waiting changes the heart in ways answers never could. It humbles the impatient parts of you that want control. It teaches you how to breathe without proof. It builds a quiet kind of faith, the kind that keeps walking even when the path is hidden by fog. Sometimes patience feels like being forgotten in a crowd. You look around and everyone else seems to be moving, thriving, living, while you're standing still with hope trembling in your hands. You tell yourself to stay strong, to trust, to keep believing, but the ache doesn't leave. And that's okay. Faith was never meant to cancel your feelings, it's meant to carry them. God isn't asking you to be numb, He's asking you to be near. Even when nothing changes, draw near. Even when the waiting hurts, stay close. Maybe you've reached the point where you're tired of hearing in God's time. Those words sound beautiful until you have to live them, until you have to sit in the hallway while every door stays closed, until you have to watch days turn into months and months into years, while your heart keeps whispering, how much longer? Patience is hard because it doesn't come with a calendar. There's no countdown, no notification that says your miracle arrives tomorrow. It just asks you to trust, and trusting without a timeline feels like walking blindfolded. But maybe that's exactly where faith grows best, in the dark, when your only light is belief itself. Think about it. Every sunrise begins in darkness. Every seed breaks open before it blooms. Every promise from God carries a process that no one celebrates because it's unseen. That's where you are now, in the unseen, in the becoming. You're not lost. You're being softened. The ground of your heart is being tilled for harvest. You are, right now, in the place Galatians 6-9 was written for. Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. The proper time is the part that hurts, because it's never the time we want. We want immediate. God works in eternal. We live by clocks. He works by seasons. And when heaven's season doesn't match your schedule, frustration grows like weeds. But even weeds can't choke a seed that's buried by God's own hand. So if you're standing in the long middle, the space between what you prayed for and what you see breathe, you haven't failed because nothing's happening. You're just being trusted with the in-between. The waiting room of heaven isn't punishment. It's where faith learns endurance. It's where God takes the version of you that prayed for quick answers and molds you into someone who can carry lasting ones. Every moment you've thought was wasted is still counted. Every tear has been seen. Every sigh has been written down in heaven's book as proof that you kept believing when it would have been easier to walk away. Patience is the courage to stay. And you've stayed. Even with trembling hands, even with quiet doubt hiding under your faith, you've stayed. That matters more than you realize. So tonight, while the world rushes ahead, let yourself rest. You don't have to fix the timing. You don't have to make things happen faster. The same God who started the story is still writing it. He hasn't skipped your chapter. He's just perfecting the lines. There's a strange kind of ache that only waiting brings. It doesn't scream. It hums quietly beneath your ribs, reminding you that you're still here, still hoping for something you can't touch yet. You wake up each day carrying the weight of an unfinished prayer, trying to convince yourself that maybe today will be the day things shift. You check for signs in conversations, in timing, in coincidences that might whisper it's close now. But sometimes there are no signs, just the same routine, the same unanswered silence. And that silence can feel louder than any storm. When days stretch into weeks, and weeks blur into months, patience begins to feel like punishment. You start comparing timelines, comparing blessings. You scroll through photos of people celebrating what you've been praying for, and you wonder if you're the only one still standing in the hallway. But what if the hallway isn't a delay? What if it's the classroom where faith learns how to breathe? Because every season of waiting is really a lesson in letting go of control. You're not being withheld from something good, you're being prepared to hold it without losing yourself when it comes. It's okay if you've had moments where you almost gave up. God saw them. Every time you said, "I'm done," and still woke up the next day with a flicker of hope, heaven noticed. Every time you forced a smile through disappointment, that was courage. You think no one sees the quiet battles, but the one who counts every hair on your head has been keeping record of every time you stayed. You may not realize it, but you are stronger now than when the waiting began. You're learning endurance, not the loud kind that shouts victory, but the quiet kind that whispers, "I'll keep believing anyway." Patience, in its purest form, is trust. It's standing on the edge of uncertainty and deciding to believe that God's silence isn't rejection, it's construction. Somewhere, behind the scenes, something is being built for you, piece by piece. And sometimes, He delays what you asked for because He's rearranging what surrounds it. A promise too early can collapse under pressure, but a promise delivered in the right season, it sustains. There's a story you don't know yet about this delay. Maybe this waiting is saving you from something that would have hurt you. Maybe the opportunity that fell apart wasn't meant to break you, it was meant to steer you away from harm. Maybe that person who walked away made room for someone whose love won't make you question your worth. Maybe the rejection that stung was the redirection that will soon make sense. You're not being denied, you're being redirected towards something safer, deeper, truer. When you can't trace what God is doing, trust His heart. He's never wasted a tear. He's never ignored a prayer that came from honesty. You might think He's quiet, but He's moving in ways you can't yet perceive. The seed doesn't hear the rain forming above it. The child doesn't feel the sunrise being prepared for the next morning. You can't see tomorrow being written, but it's already in motion. The truth is, waiting exposes what you believe about love. If you think God's love depends on how fast He answers, the silence will always feel cruel. But if you start to believe that His love is the answer, even before the outcome arrives, you'll find peace right in the middle of the delay. Because love is what sustains you when evidence disappears. So maybe tonight, instead of asking when, ask what is this waiting teaching me about trust, about surrender, about believing without proof? Because the version of you that's emerging in this season is becoming someone who no longer panics when the plan pauses. Someone who can stand in stillness and say, even here, God is good. You might not feel strong, but patience isn't about feeling, it's about staying. Every time you show up again, every time you whisper another prayer, even when you don't feel heard, every time you resist the urge to force your own way, you're proving that faith is still alive. You're proving that hope can exist even when the outcome hasn't arrived. And one day when this chapter finally shifts, you'll see why it took so long. You'll understand that God wasn't withholding the answer. He was widening your capacity to receive it. He was deepening your roots so your joy wouldn't blow away with the first storm. You'll realize that this patience, this painful, quiet, lonely patience was the making of your strength. So keep breathing, keep showing up, keep tending to the small things that are still within your reach. You don't have to move mountains right now. You just have to remain steady until the mountain moves for you. Your breakthrough is not lost, it's learning your name. There are nights when you lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why the waiting feels so personal. You tell yourself it shouldn't hurt this much, that patience is supposed to be peaceful, but peace feels far away when your heart is aching for something you can't touch. You scroll through your memories, trying to find where the delay began, where the promises seemed to pause. And in that quiet space, doubt whispers louder than faith. Maybe I wasn't meant to have it. Maybe I heard God wrong. But no, what if you didn't hear him wrong? What if you just heard him early? Because sometimes God gives you a glimpse of what's coming, not so you can run ahead, but so you can hold on through the wait. The vision is real, but the timing belongs to him. You saw the promise, but you didn't see the process. And that process, the stretching, the silence, the in-between isn't punishment, it's shaping. It's the slow work of heaven turning your prayer into a reality that won't crumble when it arrives. You see, patience is a paradox. It asks you to believe in something you can't see while releasing the need to control how it comes. That tension is holy ground. It's where your faith matures from I believe because I see to I believe because I know who promised. And that kind of faith, it's not built overnight. It's formed in the fires of disappointment, in the ache of unanswered prayers, in the tears that no one else sees. Every time you've whispered, God, are you still there? He was closer than the breath behind those words. He doesn't step back when you question him. He draws nearer. The very act of asking means you still trust there's someone listening. You may not hear an answer yet, but his silence is not absence, it's strategy. Because patience requires mystery, and mystery is where faith learns to breathe. Sometimes God delays because he's not just preparing the blessing, he's preparing you. You've changed since the first time you asked. You've shed layers of expectation, pride, and fear. You've learned what matters and what doesn't. The version of you that began this waiting could never hold what's coming, but the version being molded in the waiting will. You're being stretched, yes, but only because the promise is bigger than you think, and it's okay to admit that it hurts. Patience doesn't mean pretending you're fine. It means being honest about your pain while still choosing to trust. It's saying, this hurts, but I believe there's purpose here. It's sitting in the tension of I'm not okay right now, but I know I will be. That kind of honesty doesn't make you faithless. It makes you real. And God works beautifully with real. There's something sacred about people who still show up to life when they're weary, who still speak kind words when they feel unseen, who still give love when they're running low. That's what patience looks like. It's not quiet waiting in a corner. It's gentle endurance in motion. It's showing up to today with faith that tomorrow's answers are already forming. You might think, but I've waited so long, maybe I missed my moment. No, you can't miss what was written for you. God's plans aren't fragile. They don't break because you hesitated or stumbled. What's meant for you will still find you, even if it takes the long road. The only thing you can lose is peace, and even that, God can restore. You can be weary and still chosen. You can be tired and still trusted. Remember this, the waiting is not wasted. It's the womb of something new. Just like a seed breaks before it grows, just like a cocoon tightens before the wings unfold, this pressure you feel is not the end, it's transformation. You're being made into someone who can walk through storms without fear, who can hold blessings without pride, who can wait without bitterness. That's what patience does. It grows roots before it grows fruit. Maybe your heart feels empty right now, but empty doesn't mean abandoned. Sometimes God clears space so something new can fill it. Sometimes He lets doors close because you're meant to build your own. Sometimes He lets silence linger because He wants your attention before He gives you your answer. And in those moments when it feels like nothing is happening, oh, so much is happening. The unseen is always busier than the visible. If you could see the threads God is weaving behind the scenes, the people being moved into position, the opportunities aligning, the healing forming inside you, you'd never doubt again. But He doesn't show you yet, because faith can only grow in the unseen. You are learning how to walk without proof, how to breathe without control, how to trust without clarity. That's not easy work, it's holy work. And heaven celebrates you for staying when you could have walked away. There comes a point in every season of waiting when you stop asking when and start wondering why. Why is it taking this long? Why does everyone else seem to move ahead while I'm still standing still? Why does my heart ache when I've done everything right? You've prayed, you've surrendered, you've trusted, and yet the silence stretches longer. It starts to feel personal, like maybe you've been overlooked, like maybe heaven has forgotten your name. But hear this gently, you haven't been forgotten. You've been chosen for deeper formation. There are seasons when God doesn't rush, because what He's building in you takes time. Some blessings are instant, but others are eternal, and eternal things require endurance. You're not being delayed because you're unworthy. You're being developed because you're capable of carrying more than you realize. Maybe lately you've been questioning your worth. Maybe you've started believing the lie that if things were really meant for you, they would have happened by now. But worth isn't measured by speed. Worth is proven in the waiting, in the moments you keep believing, even when there's no evidence to hold on to. Every time you choose faith over frustration, you're growing. Every time you choose prayer over panic, heaven notices. Every time you whisper, "I trust you," even with trembling lips, you're building spiritual muscle that will carry you far beyond this moment. And maybe patience feels lonely right now. It often does. Because not everyone will understand your process. Some people will tell you to move on, to settle, to take control. But deep down, something in you knows that rushing ahead would cost you more than waiting. There's a quiet strength in choosing to stay when the world tells you to chase. There's courage in standing still when everything in you screams to run. Sometimes the silence of God is not a sign of distance, it's an invitation to intimacy. When everything else quiets down, His whisper becomes clearer, but you'll only hear it when you stop trying to fill the silence with your own noise. Waiting becomes sacred when you start asking not for things to happen, but for your heart to stay open while they don't. And maybe that's where you are right now, in the tension between hope and heartbreak. You believe God can, but you're not sure if He will. You believe He's good, but you can't see how this pain could be part of His plan. You're trying to keep your faith alive, but the flame flickers small some days. You smile in public, but cry in secret, because waiting hurts in ways words can't explain. Yet even there, even in that quiet ache, God is near. He's collecting every tear, not as evidence of weakness, but as proof of endurance. He's counting your sighs as prayers. He's watching you hold on, not because you're stubborn, but because you love Him enough to believe He still has something beautiful planned. You may not feel like it, but you're walking by faith right now. Every step through uncertainty, every moment of still believing when it would be easier to give up, that's faith in its rawest, most powerful form. Heaven doesn't measure your progress by what you achieve, but by what you endure without losing love. There's a line between patience and giving up, and it's thinner than most people think. Giving up says, "It'll never happen." Patience says, "Even if it takes longer than I thought, I'll still believe." You've chosen the harder path, the one that doesn't promise instant gratification, but eternal reward. The one where the soul grows, even when the outcome doesn't. And here's something you may not have realized. Waiting is often God's protection disguised as delay. He withholds what would destroy your peace. He pauses what would make you settle. He slows the timing so your heart can heal before the blessing arrives. What you call late is actually loving. He's protecting you from walking into something before you're ready, or before it's ready for you. You might not see it yet, but your patience is producing something valuable inside you. Peace that isn't dependent on progress. A faith that isn't fragile. A strength that doesn't demand proof. When your heart can wait without withering, that's when you'll realize the power that's been growing in you all along. So when you wake tomorrow and the waiting still feels heavy, remember this: you're not behind schedule. You're right on time for what God is preparing. The delay isn't a detour, it's divine design. You haven't been forgotten. You're being refined. You're not waiting for nothing, you're waiting for something holy. One day, when it all unfolds, you'll see that every pause had purpose. You'll look back and thank God for every unanswered prayer, for every not yet that felt like no, for every door that didn't open because He was preparing one that never closes. Until then, keep breathing, keep trusting, keep believing that this in-between is not the end of your story, it's the sacred space where faith learns how to stand. There are days when your patience feels stretched thin, almost to breaking. You tell yourself to trust, to keep believing, but the silence wears on you. It's like holding your breath underwater, waiting for a sign that it's safe to surface. You keep asking God, how much longer do I have to feel like this? How much longer before something changes? But heaven still feels quiet. You don't hear an answer, just the echo of your own heartbeat, reminding you that you're still alive in the waiting. And maybe that's the point. You're still here. You haven't given up. That's not weakness, that's worship. Sometimes the most powerful faith isn't loud or visible. It's the quiet, unseen endurance of someone who refuses to let go of hope, even when every reason says they should. Patience is the worship of those who stay. You see, everyone loves the miracle, But no one talks about the middle. The middle is where faith feels fragile. It's where prayers seem unanswered and the vision looks impossible. It's where you start to wonder if maybe you were foolish to hope. But the middle is also where miracles begin. Because faith doesn't flourish in the finish line, it grows in the unknown. The middle is where your heart learns to trust more than your eyes. Sometimes you look back at the person you were before the waiting and realize how much you've changed. You used to panic when plans fell apart. Now you breathe through the unraveling. You used to doubt yourself at every setback. Now you recognize it as redirection. You used to beg for control. Now you whisper, "Your will, not mine." That's growth. That's transformation. That's patience doing its quiet, holy work. Waiting will change you if you let it. It will strip away your illusions of control and show you what truly sustains you. It will expose what you've been leaning on that wasn't meant to hold your weight. It will teach you that joy isn't about having everything figured out, it's about trusting the one who does. The more you let patience have its way, the lighter you'll feel, because you'll stop carrying what was never yours to hold. But it's okay to admit that the process hurts. Sometimes patience feels like loss because you have to release your expectations. You have to let go of timelines, of outcomes, of the way you thought things should go. It's not easy to surrender the script you wrote for your life, especially when you believed it came from God Himself. But surrender isn't defeat, it's alignment. It's saying, "I trust that you still know what you're doing, even when I don't." And when you reach that place, that fragile, trembling space where you stop striving and start surrendering, peace begins to seep in. Not the kind of peace that says everything is perfect, but the kind that whispers, even if it's not, I'm still safe. Because patience doesn't always bring quick answers, but it brings deeper understanding. It reminds you that God is not late, He's deliberate. Sometimes you'll find His presence in the smallest places, a song that plays at the right moment, a stranger's kind word, a sunrise that feels like a personal promise. Those little moments are heaven's way of saying, "I'm still here. I haven't forgotten you." Pay attention to them. They're the gentle proofs that you're not alone. When you start noticing the subtle fingerprints of God in your day, the waiting shifts from pain to purpose. You begin to realize that every delay carried a hidden detail meant to bless you later. Maybe He needed to change someone's heart before yours crossed paths. Maybe He was rearranging circumstances you couldn't see. Maybe He was waiting for you to stop chasing outcomes so you could receive peace instead. Whatever the reason, it's never without love. Patience doesn't mean pretending you're okay with the wait. It means believing that even when you're not okay, God's hand still holds your story. It means crying when it hurts, but trusting that He'll still turn those tears into testimony. It means accepting that peace can exist alongside pain, that you don't have to choose one over the other. And maybe that's the quiet miracle of this season, that you're still soft. You haven't let bitterness harden your heart. You still believe in goodness. Even after disappointment, you still find reasons to smile, even through uncertainty. That's patience. That's faith alive and breathing inside you. The world may not notice it, but heaven celebrates it. So tonight, when the silence returns, don't see it as proof that nothing's happening. See it as an invitation to rest. You're not falling behind, you're being held in divine rhythm. The world rushes, but God redeems. What's meant for you isn't slipping away, it's being secured. Trust the slow work, trust the sacred in between. One day, you'll look back at this waiting season and realize it wasn't wasted time, it was sacred ground. It's where your faith matured, your roots deepened, and your peace grew unshakable. It's where you learned that patience isn't passive, it's powerful. Because waiting on God never leads to nothing. It always leads to something better, even if it looks different than you planned. And maybe this is the part where you finally exhale. You've spent so long holding everything together, pretending to be strong, pretending the weight doesn't ache, that you've forgotten how to simply breathe. You don't have to hide your exhaustion anymore. God knows it. He sees it in the way your shoulders slump when you think no one's watching, in the way your prayers have become quieter, shorter, simpler. He knows when you whisper, "I'm trying," even when you can't find words for anything else. Patience doesn't always feel holy, but it is. It's holy because it's honest. It's the language of those who refuse to stop believing even when they can't see. It's the heart's way of saying, "I still trust you, even when it trembles." The world measures progress by speed, but heaven measures it by surrender. The longer you wait, the deeper your roots grow, the stronger your trust becomes, and the more your peace begins to outlast the chaos around you. You might not see it, but your patience is already producing something. Every time you choose not to give up, something shifts in the unseen. Every time you stay kind, stay gentle, stay faithful in small things, you're planting seeds for the harvest that's on its way. It's easy to overlook the quiet work of patience, but heaven never does. Galatians 6-9 was written for moments like this. Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up. The proper time, that means there's a right time. A time that won't come early or late. A time that will arrive precisely when both you and your promise are ready for each other. But here's what no one tells you. The harvest doesn't just appear. It grows in the same soil where your tears once fell. Every moment you thought was wasted becomes nourishment for what's to come. Every disappointment, every unanswered prayer, every delay, they're all part of the foundation being built beneath you. When your blessing finally blooms, it won't be fragile. It will be rooted, steady, unshakable, because it was watered by your endurance. And when that time comes, when what you've prayed for finally arrives, you'll see it wasn't random at all. You'll remember the nights you wanted to quit, the prayers that ended in tears, the days when you wondered if you were crazy for believing. And you'll realize none of it was in vain. Every moment was used, every silence was speaking, every wait was working. God's timing won't make sense until it suddenly does. And when it does, you'll stand there, tears in your eyes, realizing that if things had happened any earlier, you wouldn't have been ready. You'll see that the delay was mercy, that His "not yet" was His way of saying, "I love you too much to let you settle for less than what I've planned." So tonight, if you're listening to this with a weary heart, let this be a reminder you're not being punished by this waiting. You're being positioned. The promise didn't pass you by. It's still on its way, walking at the pace of your growth. Heaven's clock doesn't tick by minutes and hours, it moves by faith and surrender. And right now, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Be patient with the story God is writing. Don't rush what needs to mature. Don't despise the slowness, it's saving you from shallow roots. Keep showing up, keep trusting, even in the silence. Keep believing that one day you'll look back and thank God, not only for the answer, but for the waiting that made you strong enough to receive it. Because one day, this ache you feel will turn into awe. The same place that broke your heart will become the ground where blessings bloom. You'll tell your story not with bitterness, but with peace. You'll say, "It hurt, but it was worth it. I waited, but I grew. I didn't understand, but I trusted, and He was faithful. So rest now, beloved soul. You don't have to keep fighting the timeline. God's not late. He's loving you on purpose, in His own perfect rhythm. Your patience is not wasted, it's working. Something holy is being born in this silence, and soon the wait will no longer feel like waiting. It will feel like fulfillment. You're doing better than you think. You're stronger than you know. You're not behind, you're being prepared. And when the season shifts, you'll see every moment of patience was a stepping stone to the promise. There comes a moment in every long wait when you realize that patience isn't just about time, it's about trust. You've stood at the edge of your own understanding for so long that it feels like the ground beneath you might give way. You've prayed, and when heaven stayed quiet, you prayed again. You've whispered, "I believe," even when belief felt paper thin. And through it all, something inside you has begun to change. What used to be panic is now a quieter surrender. What used to be a question, "When will this end?" has turned into a softer one. Can I still trust while I wait? Trust. Such a small word, yet it holds the weight of your whole heart. It asks you to unclench your fists from the plans you've made and place them into hands you can't see. It invites you to stop trying to predict, to fix, to figure out, and instead to breathe and believe that the one who began your story knows exactly where to take it next. Trust isn't passive, it's the deepest form of action. It's what happens when patience matures, when you stop striving and start resting in the certainty that God is still working, even when you can't measure it. You might not realize it, but every moment you've chosen trust over control, heaven has celebrated. Every time you've said, "I don't understand, but I'll stay," something eternal has shifted in your spirit. Because the truth is, waiting without trust is torment, but waiting with trust becomes worship. And maybe that's what this season is teaching you, to turn your waiting into worship. You've seen what happens when you try to rush ahead. You've watched plans unravel, doors close, and your own strength run dry. You've tried to hold everything together with your own hands, only to learn that control doesn't bring peace, it breeds exhaustion. But when you begin to trust, peace doesn't wait for the outcome. It arrives in the middle. It meets you in the hallway. It whispers, "You're safe here," even before you see the answer. Trust doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to bear. It's releasing the illusion that your timing can improve God's plan. It's choosing to believe that even the delays have divine purpose. Maybe that's why patience hurts, because it requires surrendering your clock for His calendar, and His calendar is never wrong. Think of every time you've been guided when you didn't even know it, every near miss, every closed door that protected you, every detour that led you to something better. Those weren't accidents, they were evidence. Evidence that you've never been navigating this life alone. Trust grows best in hindsight, but faith learns to trust in real time. That's what you're practicing right now, real-time faith. Some days it feels like trust comes easily, like the sky is clear and your heart can breathe again. Other days it's a wrestle. You wake up heavy, feeling like maybe it's safer not to hope too much. But faith was never about safety, it's about surrender. To trust means to open your hands, even if they're trembling, and say, "I believe you're still good, even here." You're learning what Abraham learned when he waited for a promise that seemed impossible, what Hannah learned when her prayers echoed through the temple in tears, what Joseph learned in the years between dreams and fulfillment. They all learned that God's faithfulness doesn't fade in the waiting, it's refined there. And that same faithfulness is holding you. Galatians 6-9 whispers again, "Do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest if you do not give up." The proper time, those words carry the pulse of trust. They mean there's a clock in heaven that never misfires, a rhythm that holds your life perfectly in step. You don't have to make anything happen sooner, you just have to stay. Every breath of trust is a seed. You may not see it growing, but something beneath the soil is alive. Patience keeps it watered, trust keeps it rooted. Together they turn waiting into becoming. There will come mornings when you wake up and realize trust is a choice you'll have to make again today. It isn't something that locks in once. It's a decision you renew. Some days that choice feels light, you sense hope moving quietly beneath the surface, and peace wraps around you like warmth. Other days, it feels heavy. You whisper, "Lord, I trust you," but your voice shakes because you're still afraid of what silence might mean. But even trembling trust is still trust. Even uncertain faith is still faith. Heaven doesn't measure the volume of your belief. It listens for the direction of your heart. Every time you lean toward God instead of away from Him, you are trusting. You're saying, "Even if I don't understand, I still believe. You understand me." Sometimes trust looks like doing nothing, and that's the hardest part for those of us who like to fix things. We want signs, strategies, solutions. We want to feel productive in the waiting, but God's work is often invisible. It's quiet. It unfolds in the background while you're learning how to breathe again. He isn't asking you to solve it, He's asking you to stay still long enough to see that He already has. Patience is the posture of trust. When you stop fighting the clock, your spirit finally has space to hear the whisper, "You're safe in my timing." And safety doesn't mean everything feels good. It means you're held even when it doesn't. You may have noticed that life keeps giving you small chances to practice this. The appointment that gets canceled, the call that never comes, the plan that shifts at the last second. They seem like inconveniences, but they're invitations, tiny lessons in releasing control. Each one asks, will you panic, or will you pause and trust me here too? If you look closely, you'll see that God has never failed to come through. Maybe not on your schedule, but always right on His. Think back. Every heartbreak that once felt like the end eventually led to a new beginning. Every closed door redirected you somewhere safer. Every delay changed something in you that needed changing. That pattern isn't coincidence, it's consistency. And consistency builds trust. There's a kind of strength that only grows when you stop trying to rescue yourself. That's the strength patience births. It teaches you that faith doesn't always mean fighting harder. Sometimes it means resting deeper. Resting in the truth that God is not indifferent to your pain, He's invested in your becoming. And here's something you might not have noticed. The more you trust, the quieter the fear becomes. Fear feeds on urgency. It tells you to hurry, to grab, to fix, to control. But trust slows you down until peace has room to breathe. Trust says, I don't have to know what's next to know I'll be okay. There will be moments when doubt walks back in and sits down beside you. It will whisper old stories. Remember when it didn't work out last time? Remember when you prayed and nothing changed? When that happens, don't argue with doubt. Just acknowledge it and then look higher. Say, yes, I remember, and I'm still here. That means grace carried me then, and it will carry me now. Patience turns those memories into monuments. Each time God saw you through becomes a stone of remembrance you can stand on when the ground feels unsteady. Every answered prayer, every quiet rescue, every undeserved mercy, they all testify that He hasn't failed you yet. Trust doesn't erase uncertainty, it transforms it. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What is this shaping in me?" And that shift changes everything. You start seeing the wait not as wasted time, but as sacred time. The silence stops feeling empty and starts feeling expectant. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your heart is to let go of the timeline you built in your head. God doesn't measure destiny by deadlines. His plans don't expire because they're late, they ripen because they're right. When you rest in that, your chest loosens, you can breathe again, and somewhere in that peace, you'll feel it, a subtle but certain assurance that the same God who carried you through every other season isn't about to drop you now. You'll start to see small evidence of His presence, a friend's unexpected text, a moment of calm, a sense that you're loved even here. Those are His fingerprints. He's reminding you that patience and trust were never wasted, they were always the foundation. There's a rhythm to trust. It's quieter than anxiety and slower than fear. It doesn't rush to prove anything. It simply keeps breathing, keeps believing, keeps standing when everything else feels uncertain. When your mind spins with what ifs and worst cases, trust whispers, "Be still. I'm working." That's the kind of patience that changes a life, not the kind that waits with gritted teeth, but the kind that waits with open hands. When you stop demanding answers and start resting in assurance, something sacred happens inside you. You begin to realize that trust is not the absence of questions, it's the refusal to let those questions rule you. You still wonder, you still ache, you still wish things would hurry, but underneath it all is this steady heartbeat that says, "God hasn't left me." Every day you practice that heartbeat, you're building muscle in places no one can see. Others might look at you and think nothing's changing, but heaven knows better. It sees the courage it takes to wake up hopeful again. It sees the way you refuse to shut your heart off even when disappointment tempts you to. That's trust in motion, faith quietly doing its work. It's okay if you're tired. Patience and trust were never meant to be effortless. They were meant to be enduring. You're not weak because you feel weary. You're human. Even Jesus waited 30 silent years before His public purpose unfolded. If the Son of God Himself moved in divine timing, you can be sure that the Father's timing for you is no less precise. Sometimes God withholds details because He's teaching you dependence. If you knew every turn, you'd stop leaning on Him. So He lets you take one step at a time. You learn to walk by light that only reaches the next footstep. That's trust, moving forward without a map, guided by presence instead of plans. And slowly, something inside you begins to settle. You start realizing you don't need constant proof to feel secure. You can smile even without clarity, laugh even without closure, breathe even without knowing how it all ends. Because you've discovered that peace doesn't come from prediction. It comes from proximity, from staying close to the one who never changes. Think of how many storms you've already survived. You didn't think you'd make it through some of them, but you did. And now you're stronger, wiser, softer. That's what trust does. It turns survival into growth. Every time you've chosen to keep believing, you've rewritten the story of fear. There's a moment in every believer's journey when trust becomes less about outcomes and more about intimacy. You stop asking, When will you fix this? And start asking, what are you showing me about you? That's when waiting becomes worship. The relationship deepens. The noise fades. You begin to sense His presence in ordinary things, the warmth of morning light, the quiet hum of the world waking up, the peace that meets you in prayer. These are small, holy confirmations that you are not alone in the wait. And when you remember Galatians 6-9, do not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time you will reap a harvest. If you do not give up, you realize that trust is the bridge between sowing and reaping. The waiting isn't wasted, it's watering the ground. Every act of kindness, every prayer whispered through tears, every moment you choose love over bitterness is seed. Trust keeps it alive beneath the soil until the season turns. Maybe that's why the enemy of your soul fights trust so fiercely. If he can't take your promise, he'll try to take your patience. He'll whisper that God has forgotten, that you're running out of time, that your faith is foolish. But the truth is, he's terrified of a believer who stays steady, because steady hearts move mountains. Steady hearts outlast storms. Steady hearts reap harvests that fleeting faith never will. So, when fear knocks again, and it will open the door with trust, say, I've been here before, and I know who stands with me. Then close the door gently and go back to peace. You don't have to fight every thought. You just have to anchor yourself in truth. The one who promised is faithful. That's not wishful thinking, it's the record of eternity. Trust is not something you master once. It's something you return to every single day. It's the quiet discipline of choosing God again and again, even when nothing new has appeared. Each morning, your heart wakes with 100 small temptations to take control, to worry, to hurry. And each time you pause, breathe, and whisper, no, I'll wait on you, you are strengthening the unseen bond between your soul and heaven. That's what spiritual maturity really looks like, not perfection, but persistence. Some days, trust feels like lightness. Other days, it feels like lifting a mountain. You won't always feel holy while you're doing it. You'll sigh, you'll question, you'll want to run. But holiness isn't in how calm you look, it's in the direction you keep walking. Keep walking toward the promise, even when you can't see the road. Keep showing up to prayer, even when words fail. That's how faith breathes through exhaustion. Patience and trust walk hand in hand. When one falters, the other holds. There will be moments when you have no patience left, and trust steps in to remind you that God's heart hasn't changed. And there will be moments when you feel too fragile to trust, and patience steps in to remind you that time is not your enemy, it's your ally. Together they build something strong enough to carry you through the waiting. You might notice that the more you lean into trust, the less you need to control outcomes. You begin to understand that God's goodness isn't proven by how quickly He gives you what you ask for, it's proven by the peace He offers even while you wait. You stop bargaining and start abiding. And in that abiding, a quiet joy starts to bloom, not because you've received the answer, but because you've met the answer Himself. That joy doesn't depend on progress reports. It grows in presence. When you start to notice His nearness in small things, trust feels natural. A conversation that comforts you at the right time. A problem that solves itself without your effort. A sunset that feels like reassurance. They are all small signs, small mercies, reminders that heaven hasn't gone silent, it's simply speaking in a softer voice. It's easy to miss those whispers when you're focused only on what's missing. But when you shift your gaze from the closed door to the open sky, you start to see that your life is still full of grace. Grace in the breath you're taking, grace in the strength that hasn't run out, grace in the fact that even disappointment couldn't make you bitter. That's trust at work. It purifies perception until you see God not just in miracles but in moments. And when that perception deepens, gratitude rises. Gratitude becomes the companion of trust. It says, I may not have everything I asked for, but I still have everything I need to keep going. And that's true right now. You have enough. Enough strength for this hour, enough grace for this challenge, enough love to outlast the loneliness. Trust helps you see the enough that fear tries to hide. When you live like that, your soul finds rhythm again. You stop counting days and start counting blessings. You stop checking the clock and start checking your heart. And slowly, you realize the waiting hasn't been wasted at all. It's been rewiring your spirit to rest instead of rush. You've traded panic for patience, control for confidence, worry for worship. That's transformation, the kind that only time and trust together can create. And when life throws you another delay, you won't crumble the way you once did. You'll sigh, smile, and say, He's done this before, He'll do it again. That's not naive optimism. That's memory turned into faith. You remember the past not as proof of pain, but as proof of providence. Every story behind you becomes a song that steadies you. Every old fear that proved false becomes a friend reminding you that you're still here, still chosen, still loved. So, when your mind starts running ahead again, imagining every possible ending, pull it back to now. This moment, right here, is enough for God to work with. He doesn't need your timeline. He needs your trust. And trust is what you've been growing all along, quietly, faithfully, even when you didn't notice. It's in you now, a gentle strength that will not break. Eventually, you start to notice a subtle change within yourself. The ache is still there, but it no longer controls you. The questions still come, but they no longer shake you. Something deeper has taken root. Trust has become a habit. You no longer wait with clenched fists. You wait with open palms. You begin to realize that patience isn't about waiting for life to begin again. It's about learning how to live fully, even while you wait. That realization brings a new kind of peace. It's quieter than happiness, but stronger than despair. It's a peace that doesn't depend on knowing what comes next, only on knowing who walks beside you. You may not have the answers, but you have His presence, and that's more than enough. You start finding God in places you once overlooked, in laughter shared with a friend, in the warmth of a sunrise, in the stillness after prayer. You realize that the God you've been waiting for has been waiting with you all along. Every sigh, every tear, every tired whisper of faith, He was there, not just watching, but feeling it with you, holding you steady when your strength ran out. There's a tenderness in that kind of trust. It stops asking God to prove Himself and simply begins to rest in His character. It stops demanding signs and begins to notice the evidence already here. You begin to say things like, I don't know how, but I know who. That sentence becomes your anchor in uncertainty, and with every small act of letting go, your spirit grows lighter. You stop rehearsing old disappointments. You stop comparing your pace to someone else's. You stop apologizing for not being there yet, wherever there is. You finally understand that God doesn't measure you by progress charts. He measures you by presence. Are you still here, still believing, still reaching for Him? Then you're exactly where you should be. Trust has this beautiful way of turning your heart outward again. Instead of closing off in fear, You begin to care again, give again, love again. You understand now that the same patience that healed you is meant to flow through you. The empathy that grew from your waiting becomes the comfort you give to others. That's how God multiplies the lessons of delay, by turning survivors of waiting into carriers of peace. You may even begin to thank Him for what didn't happen, for the things that fell apart, for the doors that stayed shut, for the relationships that ended. Because now, looking back, you see protection where you once saw rejection. You see mercy where you once saw loss. And gratitude replaces grief. You begin to whisper, "You really did know better, didn't you?" That's the secret beauty of patience. It turns hindsight into hallelujah. What once felt unbearable becomes unexplainably sacred. The very waiting that once made you question God becomes the proof that He never left. You see it now. Every not yet was an invitation to deeper trust. Every delay was a doorway to dependence. And as your trust deepens, your prayers start to change. They become simpler, gentler. Instead of "Lord, hurry," you find yourself saying, "Lord, hold me." Instead of "Why not now?" you whisper, "Whenever you're ready." That shift isn't resignation, it's revelation. You've learned that the safest place to be is not ahead of God or behind Him, but right beside Him. And when people look at you and ask how you keep your peace in such uncertainty, you'll smile and say, "It wasn't me. It was grace. Grace taught me to wait. Grace taught me to trust." Because patience and trust are both miracles of grace, invisible ones, but powerful all the same. The world may never understand the strength it takes to wait like this, but heaven does. Heaven calls it endurance, perseverance, faith. Every time you choose trust over panic, you shine. Every time you stay when walking away would be easier, you echo the heart of Christ Himself. The one who trusted the Father's plan even through silence, even through sorrow, even through the cross. And that's why this waiting isn't wasted, it's holy. Because trust doesn't just change your situation, it changes your soul. You're not the same person who started this journey. You're gentler now, deeper now, stronger now. You've discovered a peace that no result can give and no delay can take away. There will come a night when you'll realize you no longer need to keep checking the horizon. You'll still want what you've prayed for, but the desperation will be gone. The tension that used to live in your chest will have melted into calm. That's what full trust feels like: rest. Not because everything has finally happened, but because you've finally stopped trying to make it happen on your own. You'll look around and see how far you've come without even noticing it. You'll remember the panic that used to wake you at 2 a.m., the questions that used to loop in your head, the ache that once felt endless. And you'll realize that somewhere along the way, the weight shifted from your shoulders to God's hands. He didn't fix everything overnight. He simply held you long enough for peace to take root. That's what trust does. It trades control for confidence. It replaces "what if" with "even if it takes longer, even if it looks different, even if I never understand, I'll still believe. You are good." That's the language of mature faith. It's quiet, humble, unshakable. It doesn't demand, it delights. It doesn't panic, it praises. When trust becomes your rhythm, you stop fearing time. You no longer flinch at delays because you know the God who governs time is not bound by it. You start to see patience as protection, not punishment. You recognize that every pause has purpose to give you space to heal, to learn, to grow, to align. You see how each detour carried hidden mercy, how each closed door guarded your peace. And one day, when the thing you've been waiting for finally arrives, you won't rush toward it with anxiety. You'll walk toward it with gratitude. You'll handle it gently because you'll remember what it cost you to wait. You'll know that blessings are meant to be received with reverence, not relief. The gift will be sweet, yes, but the growth will be sacred. That's the miracle of patience and trust. By the time the promise comes, you've already changed enough to hold it wisely. You're not the same soul who started this journey. You're steadier, softer, wiser. You've learned that God isn't just faithful at the finish line, He's faithful in every footstep that led there. And even if the outcome looks different than you imagined, you'll still be grateful, because what you really wanted all along wasn't the thing, it was the peace that comes from knowing you're never alone in the waiting. You found that peace, and now it lives in you. So breathe easy tonight. You don't have to chase the future, it's already written. You don't have to rush the process, it's already blessed. Trust has brought you here, and trust will carry you home. Close your eyes and rest in this truth. The same God who began this story will finish it beautifully. Nothing is lost, nothing is late. Every second is being used. You are exactly where you're meant to be held, loved, becoming. Let patience keep its perfect work. Let trust keep its steady rhythm. And let your heart finally rest in the knowing that God is still good, still present, and still writing a story worth waiting for. There comes a morning quiet, almost ordinary, when you wake and realize something has shifted. The air feels lighter. The ache that used to greet you before your eyes opened is gone. You don't know when it happened, only that somewhere between the tears and the trust, peace took its rightful place. That's how God works, softly, steadily, in ways that feel like dawn after a long night. You waited, and now you can feel the promise breathing near. At first, it won't look like much. Just a small door opening where you expected a wall, a phone call, a conversation, a gentle nudge that says, "It's time," and you'll know it wasn't luck. It was alignment. All those nights you wondered if heaven had heard you were not wasted. They were preparation for this quiet unfolding. The blessing doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with familiarity, as if your soul has been expecting it all along. When it finally happens, when the prayer you've whispered for years begins to take shape, you'll feel two things at once: wonder and humility. Wonder that God remembered the details you forgot to mention. Humility that He never needed your perfection, only your patience. You'll look back at the path that brought you here and realize it wasn't random. Every delay, every detour, every heartbreak was a thread in the tapestry. Nothing was wasted, nothing was accidental, and as gratitude wells up, you'll find yourself thanking Him not only for what arrived, but for what didn't. You'll see how every no protected you, how every closed door redirected you to something better. You'll remember the nights you begged Him to hurry, and you'll whisper, "Thank you for taking your time," because now you understand. If He had answered too soon, you wouldn't have been ready to receive it. Breakthrough rarely looks like what you pictured. Sometimes it's not the thing you asked for, it's the peace you find instead. Sometimes it's the courage to start again, the healing of a heart you thought would never feel whole, the quiet joy that says, "Even if nothing else changes, I'm okay." That's breakthrough too. It's the soul realizing that God Himself was the answer all along. You'll begin to notice that you no longer need constant reassurance. The fear that once ruled your thoughts loses its grip. You trust the rhythm now, the rise and fall, the giving and taking, the silence and the song. You see that faith isn't about reaching a destination, it's about walking every mile with Him. You've discovered that patience isn't waiting for life to start, it's living fully while God finishes what He began. And when people ask how you held on so long, you'll smile and say, it wasn't strength, it was grace. Because you'll know the truth, you were never the one holding everything together. God was holding you. He was the steady ground beneath your trembling steps, the quiet voice reminding you, keep going, I'm not done yet. Now, standing on the other side of the waiting, you can see what He was building, a version of you that's peaceful, grounded, and sure of His goodness. The storms that once terrified you have become testimonies. The delays that once broke your heart have become doorways to deeper faith. You've learned that waiting with God is never wasted time, it's sacred time. It's where character is formed, trust is born, and destiny matures. So breathe, beloved soul. The waiting season may be over, but its lessons remain. Carry them with you. When the next unknown comes, and it will remember what you learned here, that patience is not punishment, it's protection. That delay does not mean denial. That every moment surrendered in faith becomes a seed for future grace. Live with open hands now. Keep giving, keep loving, keep trusting. The same God who answered before will answer again, each time with the same gentle precision. You don't have to fear the in-between anymore. You know who fills it. You can walk into tomorrow unafraid, because the one who writes your story has already written victory on every page. And when night falls again, you'll lie down differently, not anxious, not waiting for proof, just thankful. Thankful that you learned how to rest before the outcome. Thankful that patience taught you peace. Thankful that trust became your way of living. You'll whisper into the quiet, you were faithful. You are faithful. You'll always be faithful. That is the sound of fulfillment, not the noise of arrival, but the stillness of realization. The promise has come, yes, but more than that, the promiser has stayed. And that presence, that steady, unwavering love is the true reward for every soul that chose to wait. So let your heart rest now. You've done enough striving. Let gratitude be your final prayer tonight. Everything you lost, everything you feared, everything you waited for, it's all been turned into light. You are where you're meant to be, held, healed, whole. Amen. If this message reached you today, it wasn't by chance, it was right on time. You're not behind, you're not forgotten. You're simply in the hands of a God who never rushes and never fails. If you need reminders like this, moments that lift your spirit, guide your heart, and help you rest in His timing, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this with someone who's waiting too. Because patience is not the pause before the promise, it's the path that leads you to it. You are seen, you are loved, and your time will come right on time.